The Kiseki series, which is translated as the Trails series in English, heavily builds on shared plot lines and complex political intrigue across many games. So with that said, I'd like to welcome you to the next installment in this series of detailed but still condensed story summaries. There's a lot to cover regarding Erebonia's Civil War in Cold Steel 2, so let's dive right in. Cold Steel 2 begins as Rean awakens beside Selene and Valimar in the freezing mountains of the Isengard range. The latter's core has been damaged, so he won't be able to move for a while. In desperation, Rean yells at the Divine Knight to take him back to Trista, but of course he's met with complete silence. So Rean starts down the mountain path on his own, avoiding all of Selene's attempts to gain his attention. A little while later, Rean finally addresses her with a passive-aggressive response. It's not like he's angry that she completely overrode his decision back in Trista or anything. Selene finally breaks the news to Rean that it's been over a month since all of that happened. Valimar used up all his mana during the time since to heal Rean, and it's a true miracle that he's even able to walk right now after that first synchronization almost killed him. We finally learn that Selene is a familiar in service to the witches of the Hexen clan, Emma in particular. Looks like all these supposed legends are turning out to be true nowadays. They continue down the mountain path and eventually reach a large clearing that Rean recognizes from his past training with Yun Kafai. A monstrous growl interrupts the silence of the mountains and reveals a magic knight of the Dark Ages. Selene attempts to dissuade Rean from fighting it, since he stands no chance on his own, but of course her pleas fall on deaf ears. The only way down the mountain is to get past this beast, though a still recovering Rean can barely lay a scratch on it. Selene is knocked aside after shielding Rean from a blow, but to their absolute luck, someone's art saved them just in time. Their savior turns out to be Toval, with Elise and Princess Alphen in tow. Elise rushes to her brother's side right before he completely collapses from exhaustion. Rean awakens at his home in Ymir, his family and their guests relieved to see that he's okay. Everyone catches him up to speed on what's happened in the nation since he disappeared. The Noble Alliance has taken control of all the major cities in Erebonia, and it's only thanks to Toval that Princess Alphen and Elise were able to escape the occupation of Heimdall. Prince Olivert made a personal request to the Bracer to escort the two girls out of the capital, the three having arrived in Ymir 10 days later. Unfortunately, Prince Olivert's whereabouts are currently unknown, and the Emperor and Prince Cedric are currently in the protective custody of the Noble Alliance. As for Thors, the Academy and Trista were overtaken soon after the war began. There are rumors that a number of the students and staff still remain unaccounted for though, which means there are good odds that they've escaped. Selene chimes in that she knows Emma is alive at the very least. She can tell that much as her familiar, though she has no clue as to Emma's actual whereabouts. In any case, Rean needs to have faith that his classmates are safe. He has a heartwarming reunion with each parent respectively, then takes the time to visit the townsfolk who have been worried about him. He finds Toval at the bar where the Bracer relays the strange circumstance as to how he found Rean up in the mountains. He received a call from an unknown person 2 days prior that left a detailed description on where to find Rean. Though it definitely sounds odd, there are bigger things for them to be worrying about, like the actual Civil War, for example. As of now, the Noble Alliance has the overwhelming advantage, though the Imperial Army is still holding its own in a few particular areas of the country. In Ymir's church, Rean finds Princess Alphen praying intently, then soon realizes that there's a lot of bottled-up worry behind her chipper facade. Thanks to Rean, she's able to get a good cry out over the current state of her family's whereabouts. Then at last, Rean heads to the town's hot springs, the Phoenix Lings, in an attempt to relax a bit. Unfortunately though, his thoughts only seem to focus on what went wrong on that final day in Trista, settling particularly on his own failures. That's when Elisa's voice calls out, wondering if he's here. She joins him in the hot springs and tries to make some awkward conversation, but is interrupted when Rean apologizes for worrying her. Apparently so much so that she had to come out here. He gets into one of his self-hating funks, feeling guilty for how everyone always has to go out of their way for him, starting with his dad 12 years ago during that snowstorm, and culminating all the way up to last month when Class VII risked their lives for him. It finally gets to the point where Rean says he doesn't deserve other people's kindness, and that it would have been better for his classmates if he never enrolled at Thors at all. But Elise puts a stop to his cascading words. She's heard enough. She turns to face him directly and says she and everyone he just mentioned treat him kindly because they all care about him. And so, a tearful Elise asks him from the bottom of her heart to never believe that he doesn't deserve their kindness. Then she reminds him of all the hopeful faces his classmates surely donned before they were all separated. This memory seems to lift Rean's spirits at last, and that's when Alphen strolls in with Celine. The princess's teasing of Elise means that she must be in better spirits now as well.
Their peaceful downtime in the hot springs is suddenly interrupted by a familiar monstrous roar coming from the mountains. Celine can sense the Magic Knight heading towards Ymir because of Rean's, aka the Ashen Awakener's, presence here. Elise won't take no for an answer when it comes to accompanying her brother and Toval up the mountain, so it's the three of them that depart to challenge the knight. They eventually reach the stone monument that caused the freak snowstorm during Class VII's stay here in the Drama CD. That's when the Magic Knight decides to show up. Rean and his companions bring it to its knees, but the being draws upon a peculiar power source. That's when Rean calls for Valimar, who fortunately has just enough mana to fend off the Magic Knight. Right before Valimar's reserves completely run out, Rean vows to become strong enough to defeat Crow. Before they can head back down, Vita's familiar, Grianos, appears before them. She's able to project her voice and likeness to them via the bird. After searching this entire month for Rean and Celine, the Magic Knight's presence has finally given their location away. That's when sounds of gunfire interrupt their little chat. Apparently, the Jaegers hired by Duke Albarea have finally come to abduct the princess. At this news, the party rushes towards Ymir. Down the mountain, the entire village has been set ablaze. Rean's father manages to keep his ground between the Jaegers and the princess, but that's when the hired mercs start fighting dirty. Baron Schwarzer ends up getting shot in the back, while his wife is beaten for protecting Alphen. Rean and Elise arrive just moments after, the awful sight enough to awaken Rean's ogre mode. He strikes the Jaegers down with ease, freeing Alphen, but Elise holds her brother back before he can do anything he'd seriously regret. Toval confirms that their father and mother are still breathing, and such news finally brings Rean back to his senses. Vita pops in again and regards the scene with distaste. She sees how it's just a desperate ploy by Duke Albarea to get ahead of Duke Cayenne. The Anguish does the party a favor and uses her formidable magic to send the Jaegers away. They are to report that they found nothing out of the ordinary in Ymir. Her next words almost make it sound like she's remorseful for her actions, but they turn out to be a deceptive ruse in the end as well. While the four are looking away, a small girl on a black doll that looks just like Milliam's Lammy snatches up Princess Alphen and Elise. This girl isn't directly with Ouroboros, but has been donated by an anonymous benefactor. Vita indulges in amused laughter as they depart with their hostages. At the same time, some major noble alliance leaders are meeting on the Pantagruel. Duke Cayenne revels in Osborne's fall and the formidable forces the noble faction has at its disposal. Such forces enter the bridge once the Duke has left. The remaining ILF leaders, Zephyr Bigwigs, and even Ouroboros enforcer Blue Blanc are among the lineup. The remaining two in the back are new faces to the Cold Steel arc, but we'll see much more of them soon. As commander of the Alliance forces, Rufus sends them forth to deal with the opposing factions that still remain. Thus, the Cold Steel 2 prologue is brought to an end. Act 1 begins in Ymir, where Rean's dad is seen in a deep coma as his body recovers from his wounds. Rean parts ways with his mother, now on a mission to rescue Elise and Alphen. The party returns to where Valimar has been resting, where Rean tells him that he's on a mission to rescue not just the two girls, but his classmates as well. Valimar recognizes Class 7 as the people who helped Rean overcome the Awakener trial, and is able to confirm their locations. Incredulously, by using the remnants of animism across the country, Valimar is able to use these spirit veins, or also known as septium veins, to instantaneously travel between locations that are linked by them. The party travels through an incredible rainbow-colored tunnel and winds up in Lunaria Nature Park. The trip has used up all of Valimar's mana, so it'll take a few days before he wakes up again. Something about this area is clearly out of balance, as the higher elements are present here. Though the strange circumstances stay confined to the park, Celine can sense that something off is beginning to happen in Erebonia. Toval and Rean get to work gathering intel from the locals in Celdic, and lo and behold, they find Thors student Becky safe and sound in her family home. The Grand Market is in quite the sorry state compared to Rean's first field study here, but they arrive just in time to save Rosine from a couple of tipsy provincial army soldiers. Rosine tells them that the soldiers regularly get drunk even in broad daylight and harass the shop owners, who can do nothing in retaliation. The last bit of intel is from owner Margot. Celdic has been relatively safe from all the fighting so far, but there's a lot going down not too far from the village at the Twin Dragons Bridge. It sounds like the Noble Alliance is having a tough time breaking through the Imperial Army's line of defense there. Unfortunately, no one has seen any sign of Class 7 around here, leaving Rean and Toval stumped. That's when a precocious kid really pushes the sale of his newspaper on them. Like, really pushes them, guaranteeing that they'll really regret it if they don't buy it. Within its contents, they learn of Machias' dad's arrest and the blatant propaganda in favor of the Noble Alliance. That's when Celine notices a piece of paper stuck to the back page. It appears to be a map, along with some sort of code. Rean notices that this puzzle resembles a chessboard, and solving it leads them to some keys that unlock a storage shed. They find Machias waiting inside, where Rean wastes no time embracing him after recovering from his initial shock. Machias returns the heartfelt gesture, reminding Rean of the promise they all made that day to see each other again. But in the end, Machias thanks Rean for not giving up on finding them. Rean learns that it was Prince Olivert's Courageous that came to Class 7's rescue back in Trista, buying the students time to flee. None of them have seen or heard from the ship since, but they must be safe with Laura's dad at the helm. It turns out that Elliot and Fee had escaped with Machias, though both are out on reconnaissance right now in an attempt to get to Gorelia Fortress, since Elliot's dad and the entire 4th Armored Division is stationed there. While they wait for Elliot and Fee's next update, the three help fulfill some requests for Market Manager Otto. They return to the storehouse when it's time to receive Elliot and Fee's update. Machias prepares them for some incredible news, then Rean speaks over the transmitter. The two are so shocked that Fee accuses Machias of playing a cruel joke, before confirming this isn't a dream by pinching Elliot. They all officially reunite at an out-of-sight point on the highway. After catching up, the party decides to continue searching for a way to Gorelia Fortress to hear what the war is really like from Neidhard and Elliot's father. The checkpoint at the formidable Twin Dragons Bridge poses quite the problem. It looks like they're going to have to take a big risk and get past by taking the railway tracks. Fee says there should be some maintenance passage they can take, so they enter the waiting area and ask around as inconspicuously as they can. Suspiciously enough, a strange cloaked man addresses them as Class 7 directly. Then he promises to reveal who he is, if they can catch him. He dashes around the corner, but the party incredulously finds no sign of anyone when they make it around themselves. Fee notices a vent, however, which leads them right to the railway tracks. But the hooded man is still nowhere to be found. Once Rean and the others make it safely across, the hooded man is seen observing them from afar. He pulls his hood back, and then the familiar-looking figure offers a prayer up to the goddess on the party's behalf.
They make it to the by-road at last without being spotted, or so they think. Though she doesn't tell anyone, Fee's acute senses have picked up on some watchful eyes. The sight that awaits them at Gorelia Fortress is enough to send chills down anyone's spine. Fee summarizes it in apt words. It's as if someone took a giant scoop of ice cream right out of this once formidable fortress. The strange glowing barrier surrounding Crossbell City only adds to the confusion, and since there's nothing they can do to make any sense of all this, they start for the proving grounds. Though that's when a loud click sounds from below Machias's foot. Fee's lightning flash reflexes shoves him out of the way before the hidden mine can reduce him to pieces. Then she addresses their hidden onlookers at last. The two Zephyr guys drop down from their vantage point, impressed with how much Fee has grown. The three share in some good-natured banter, almost as if no time has passed. But Fee eventually asks what's really on her mind. Just where have they been this past year? She looked all over for them, but it was like they completely vanished off the continent. Unsurprisingly, they don't give her any real answers. And with that, their little reunion comes to an end, and both parties prepare for battle since their goals differ. Fee and her new family are unable to do much to Zeno and Leo, but the fight is interrupted by the arrival of the Alliance's soldats. It looks like the soldats that were sent along the railroad earlier were a distraction after all. Their real plan hinged on flanking the 4th Armored Division. The Zephyr guys are ordered back by their employers, which leaves Rean's group as easy pickings in front of the numerous soldats. Knowing he has no choice, Rean calls upon Valimar to get them out of this mess. He takes the weapons of one of the enemy Drakens once it's downed, then a strange resonance among Class 7's Arcus units begins taking place. It allows Rean to make use of abilities that are unique to each classmate during the mech battles. Rean deals with a couple other soldats with ease, but the provincial army officer still refuses to back down. But that's when Lieutenant General Craig and his forces round the corner and fire upon the remaining soldats. The force sent by the railway turned out to be just a mere trifle for the likes of the 4th Armored Division. Captain Claire's precise sniping lands a few blows as well, leaving the provincial army with no choice but to retreat. Elliot and his father are reunited at last, the latter embracing his son with all of his usual antics on full display. Captain Claire greets Rean and the others, then leads them to a briefing room on the Proving Grounds, the temporary base of the 4th Armored Division and Claire's RMP forces. They are currently able to deal with the Alliance's soldats just fine. It's their ever-dwindling supplies that are worrisome. Their location all the way out here makes it difficult to get any help from outside, but they have every intention of holding out as long as they can. With all that said, Lieutenant General Craig asks Elliot and his friends what they plan to do now. All 4 of them are of the same mindset with their response. As of now, they don't have an actual answer, since they still need to find the rest of Class 7 to hear the others' input first. Only after they've discussed their options together can they give him a proper answer. Craig the Red understands their intent. He only wishes that they follow whatever path they end up choosing with the conviction of a proud Erebonian. Captain Claire offers to join the students, as she is still searching for Millium. As a bonus, she can help reinforce Ymir's defenses. They accept Claire's offer with gratitude, then explore the base while they wait for her to finish her preparations for departure. To the party's surprise, they find a depressed monk and Laura's friend Monica while wandering the grounds. Then at last, Claire meets up with them in civilian clothing in front of Valimar. Before they all leave, Elliot and his father have a touching heart-to-heart. General Craig can see how much his son has grown since he first enrolled at Thors, and on the other hand, the once resentful teen has had a change of heart over the past few months and thanks his dad for sending him there. In response, Elliot's dad promises his son that once the Civil War is over, if he's still set on pursuing a career in music, he'll have his father's full support. The group departs on this heartwarming note and is teleported back to Ymir's mountains via Valimar's ability. The Divine Knight must rest again after the trip taxed him of all his mana, so the party takes a much-needed break the next day. The additional good news is that Rean's dad is beginning to do better, though he's still unconscious for the time being. Thanks to Captain Claire, Ymir now has communications established with the 4th Armored Division and RMP. Now, before they depart for the next location, either Toval or Claire, as well as one of Rean's classmates, will decide to stay behind to guard Ymir while the others are away. With that, the search and rescue party makes its way to the Nord Highlands via the Spirit Path. They arrive at the Great Stone Monuments where they first fought Millium. The four descend this towering plateau just as a major battle is breaking out between the Alliance's Soldats and the 3rd Armored Division. However, the former poses no match for One-Eyed Zek's tactics and is soon forced to retreat back to the Watchtower. It's a long trek on foot, but the party reaches Zender Gate at last. Lieutenant General Vander is glad to meet with them and gives them a rundown on what's been going on in the Highlands. Zender Gate is currently taxed fighting a two-front war ever since the Noble Alliance took the Watchtower just shortly after the war began. While they've fended off the assault so far, the general sees the gate falling within the month if nothing major changes. As for how the Watchtower was overtaken in the first place, well, they have reason to suspect that the nobles have made a temporary alliance with Calvard. It may sound hard to believe, but the soldiers who were stationed at the Watchtower all testify that they came under attack by Republican airships right as Erebonian ships launched an attack from the west. They had no choice but to retreat to Zender Gate. Since then, the 3rd Armored Division has been unable to patch any of their orbital communications through. If only they could find a way to contact Elisa's grandfather up north somehow. But in any case, the Lieutenant General has no intention of relying on Rean and his companions for help. This is the Imperial Army's problem, so the students should focus on the task they came here for. In fact, Gaius and a couple other students arrived at the Highlands about a week ago and have since gone onwards to the nomadic settlement. The settlement itself is supposedly planning to relocate farther up north to escape the violence here, so they better hurry. General Vander lends the party some horses for much smoother traveling. Then, before they head off, they find that Beryl and Mint from Thors are currently in the care of the 3rd Armored Division. The party makes for the settlement site, only to find that everyone has already evacuated. Before Rean and the others can start heading north, they are taken by surprise by a Jaeger ambush. Just as it's not looking so good for them, a lone falcon distracts the Needhogg Jaegers, then Gaius on horseback follows up. Fortunately, their foes are called back to the watchtower, though the fact that their communication devices seem to work just fine raises a lot of questions. The students all have a heartwarming reunion, then Gaius guides them to Lake Lacrima where his people have resettled. They learn from his parents that Elisa, Millium, and Gwyn have gone northeast to try and figure out what's going on with the orbital communications in the Highlands, so the party heads in that direction next. They arrive just in time to dig the three out of a sticky situation. Reunions will have to wait until the beast is felled. And once that's done, Celine voices concern over the appearance of this cryptid. Such beasts shouldn't even exist on this plane, which means something else is going on in Erebonia besides this war. Millium and Claire have their own touching reunion, as Rean and Elisa have one of their own. One that Gwyn can't help but comment on, of course. But since he and Elisa got the information they were looking for, they all head back to his cabin to discuss. It turns out that a massive orbital wave jammer has been set up on the watchtower. Though Millium and Claire have used such devices in the past, they've never seen one that had this one's reach or its ability to allow only certain orbital waves through. Unfortunately, nothing can really be done with the Alliance keeping watch. With the war becoming bloodier and the encroaching Jaegers in the Highlands, it looks like Gaius's people have little choice but to begin evacuating completely from this land they've called home for generations. This doesn't sit right with Rean though. The people of Nord shouldn't have to leave their homeland due to Erebonia's problems. He remembers how fondly Gaius spoke of his home here during that field study months ago. Plus, the people of Nord have been nothing but good to all of them. Since the Alliance forces are currently focused on the 3rd Armored Division, a third party like them could foreseeably catch them off guard and destroy the jammer. It's worth a shot, so first they must find a way to sneak in. That's when Elisa recalls the area where those mortars were fired from. Since that nook can't be seen from the watchtower, it's just the place they'll need for their operation. Millium sets the rope ladder that Gaius brought from the settlement. Then the party proceeds with their mission. They wait for most of the soldiers to leave on patrol, then begin forcing their way through the ones that remain. Rean and the others brute force their way through the Needhogg Jaegers as well, until they reach the rooftop at last. A familiar figure shows up before they can deal with the jammer though. LeBlanc's not alone either. The same girl who kidnapped Alphen and Elise makes a showing as well. Her orbital doll takes Claire and Millium by surprise, and she finally introduces herself as Altina Orion. Rean and the others apparently back their two foes into a corner, which is when Altina lets slip that she delivered the princess and Elise to Rufus Alberea. The party was wrong to think that they had the two beat though. LeBlanc uses his shadow weaving technique, the very same kind he used on the Skycast a couple years prior. Rean prepares to awaken his ogre power, but Sharon of all people shows up and frees the party. Her appearance even surprises LeBlanc, since it's been ages since he's seen the other enforcer. He questions her loyalty to the Grand Master, but she responds that she's merely prioritizing her service to the Reinford family in protecting her lady Elisa. Unlike Joshua and Ren, any path that leads to leaving Ouroboros has long been closed to her. With that out of the way, Sharon prepares to fight her own fellow enforcer. But that's when the Alliance's main forces return to the tower. Rean calls upon Valimar to deal with the airship and the soldats, while the nobles accuse him of siding with the Imperial army. He, however, maintains his affiliation as a third party in this war. Valimar turns the tides quickly and forces the Alliance to retreat. LeBlanc and Altina take their leave as well. Then the party disables the Orbital Wave Jammer. The rest of the Alliance's forces completely retreat from the Highlands, which establishes peace to Gaius's beautiful home once more. However, Sharon has come with the bad news that Ruhr is completely under Alliance control, though this comes as no surprise to Gwyn. After all, he discovered some pretty damning evidence of the Ruhr Institute's involvement, Professor Schmidt's in particular, when it comes to the construction of the jamming device. As for Gaius, he says goodbye to his family for now, and joins his classmates in their fight to protect their country, one that he's come to see as his second home. Then Valimar transports everyone, including Sharon, back to Ymir's mountains via the spirit path. The party makes its way back to the village just in time for some excellent news. Rean's father has finally regained consciousness. Baron Schwarzer begins apologizing to his wife and son for causing them such trouble, but no one in the room will entertain any of that. So instead, he wishes them all luck in recovering the remaining members of Class VII before slipping back into slumber. Speaking of rest, Rean and the others take the next day easy as they wait for Valimar to recharge his mana. Then afterwards, prepare to head to Legram next. But that will have to wait until the next video in this series. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Please like this video if you liked it, and let me know what party you took to these first two locations in the comments. I'd also like to thank my bud February Knight for helping me with some narration. He's currently working with Kitsune 547's team to bring Hajimari with English subtitles to you all, so go check out his YouTube and Twitch channels. And until next time, guys, take care. See ya!